Good afternoon. We're live with breaking news from the Adelaide Football Club, which has just announced that coach Don Pyke is quitting. Pyke and club bosses are about to speak, and we will bring you that when it happens. Tom Wren is at Westlakes and joins us now. Tom, there was doubt over Don Pyke's future, but has it all come to an end sooner than anyone expected?
Of it, and the fact that it has come in the last 12 to 24 hours, when only yesterday Don Pyke was coming in for meetings and preparing for season 2020. He's got a successful record as well, Kate. He's coached in 93 games. He's won 56 of them. However, one of the things that has counted against him is that the Crows have missed the finals in the past two seasons. They had that disastrous pre-season camp in 2018 on the Gold Coast, and that has sparked much speculation that the players are not happy at the football club. Many senior players have been dropped, and this external review as a result has been put in place, which includes Fremantle or former Fremantle champion Matthew Pavlich and also Hawthorn legend Jason Dunstall, and they are coming in to assess Don Pyke's future as well as the entire football department, it must be said. Now, Pyke still has 2 years to run on his contract, but he has decided to step down immediately. As you say, he is about to address the media very shortly, along with the chairman, Rob Chapman, who would have been involved in this decision-making process, along with the CEO, Andrew Fagan. Just what the extent of this external review will be now will be fascinating. Is it going to stop simply at the coach Don Pyke, or will there be more heads to roll? It's been a really turbulent time at the Adelaide Football Club, one that we probably haven't seen in the history of the Crows since they were formed in 1991. One of the other really interesting points too, Kate, is where to now for Adelaide? What are they going to do in terms of coaching choices? There's no shortage of names, there's no doubt about that, but it is late in the hour to start looking for a senior coach. This is the fifth club this season that has decided to part ways with its senior coach, which is an extraordinary number of coaches. In terms of the players, though, that's been the really interesting point this season. Josh Jenkins has been dropped. Bryce Gibbs has been dropped on multiple occasions. He's made some really tough and difficult calls on senior players, and the whisperings of disquiet have emanated out of Westlakes ever since. Every side goes through that transformation period where they have to make changes, they have to make hard calls on players, but you just wonder how much that resonated with the senior playing group and whether or not the feedback they have given to this external review has played a part in the club and Don Pyke deciding that it's time to part ways. Going back, though, to the point on who will replace Pyke, there's a number of names that I think immediately come to mind. One of them is Brad Scott. He coached at North Melbourne with a fair degree of success, 2 prelim finals in his decade-long career there. Ross Lyon has taken various clubs to the grand final, including Fremantle and, of course, St Kilda before that. Then we've got Sam Mitchell, who's in the mix as well, and also Ben Rutten, who's a former great of this footy club. So, Kate, no shortage of really good names that would want to be coach here at Westlakes.
There are quite a few now, and we are going to go to the press conference, which is happening at Westlakes now. Coach Don Pyke is expected to speak along with club bosses about his resignation.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming down. Relatively short notice. By now, I'm sure you've all read the press statement where we advise you that Don Pyke has today resigned from the Adelaide Football Club as senior coach. It's a really big decision for Don. It's a big decision for our football club, and I know it's one that hasn't been made lightly at all. Don approached Andrew and I several days ago, and we've had ongoing discussions naturally, as you would expect, and Don informed Andrew and I last night of his final decision, and that was to resign as coach of the Adelaide Football Club. I might pause there now. I know Don has got a statement that he would like to share, and then I think, Ian, we might just throw open to questions. Three of us will answer those as best we can, and then I'd like to wrap up once those questions are done. Dom.
Thanks, Chappie. Obviously, as you're aware, I've had discussions with both Andrew and Rob over recent times. I've elected to stand down as the coach of the Crows. It's been an absolute privilege and a joy to coach this club, and I've loved my time here trying to achieve great things with our players, for our members and our fans. As Rob alluded to, the decision's been extraordinarily difficult to reach, and I do so following some serious and honest post-season reflections and conversations with a number of key people, including players, coaches, management, board, and my family and friends. I appreciate the club is currently undertaking a comprehensive review of the football operations, though it's important that the timing and outcome of this review plays no bearing in my decision. As I said, it's not a decision I've taken lightly, but clearly the team's recent performance and the current state of the club and the playing group is not to our or my expectations, and for this in my role, I ultimately accept responsibility. There were a number of factors and considerations in making this decision, but with a clear appreciation that change is required, in the end it came down to what I felt is in the best interest of the team and the club. I believe the club needs some clean air and a fresh page to move forward, and feel that for me to continue would potentially hold back progress to move positively into next season. There's no doubt that the last 18 months has been very challenging for all involved at our club, and from a personal viewpoint, particularly frustrating and draining. Further this, I believe, to continue to coach in the current environment the club and myself have endured is simply not sustainable. I therefore feel it is best I make way and allow a fresh and new voice to set a new direction. I'm disappointed to reach this position, but vital for me are two things. One, as I've said, the club and the playing group is able to move forward and perform to a level which we believe they're capable of. And two, the health and happiness of the important people in my life. I would like to thank the players, the coaches, the staff, management and the board of the Adelaide Crows for their support and efforts over my tenure, and wish them all the very best for the future. I spoke to the players about an hour and a half ago, informing them of my decision, and clearly it wasn't an easy conversation to have with a group of players that I've grown to love. I've been fortunate to work with many wonderful people and will cherish the friendships created during my time at the club, and I'll watch with afar and follow with great interest the club and team's progress, and always have a special place in my heart for the Crows. I came to the club with the aim of helping our players to individually and collectively be the best they can be, and this has been my driving force. It's been a wonderful ride, some great memories and ultimately some sad times mixed in amongst it, but now it is clear for me it's time to move on, knowing I've given it my all. I encourage all players to continue to own and drive their careers forward and accept their role and responsibility in creating a winning team environment. I would especially like to thank my wife and daughters for their incredible love, care and support to enable me to pursue my dreams in football and to selfishly devote the time and energy into the pursuit of building and preparing a team to compete week in and week out. The families ride the highs and lows in this caper, and it is difficult to see the impact it has on those close to you at times. I'd also like to thank my friends from afar and wide who have reached out and supported in recent times. I appreciate all your thoughts and best wishes. I would like to make one quick comment around AFL footy. The landscape we now operate in as an industry is more challenging than ever for players, administrators, boards, coaches, and this is leading to a wide range of issues around contentment. I hope that in the future we can find a better balance in how we view the game, regardless of result. Otherwise, I do fear for the people's genuine love of the game. In concluding, I'd like to thank the members and the many fans of the Adelaide Crows and wish all associated with the club all the best for the future. I leave disappointed, but knowing I was true to myself, I worked hard in pursuit of victory and always had the best interests of the players and the club in mind. I believe I still have a lot to offer the game, but will now take some time with family and friends and assess my options before deciding my future path.
Don, it sounds like an acknowledgement that you're the problem. Would you like to comment on that? And secondly, are you, with 2 years to go, are you leaving with any forward payments as the club paid you out?
I'll address the first comment. I mean, clearly, when the side is performing as it is, I recognise that with others, I believe I'm part of the problem, quite clearly. The real question that I've grappled with in the last probably couple of weeks since the season's finished is, am I also part of the solution? And I guess my feeling in the conversations I've had and in my personal self-reflections, I've reached the decision that I believe it's best to hand over to a fresh face with a new voice to move the club forward.
When going forward payments, have you been paid out for any of your time ahead?
This is a resignation, as I said, completely separate to anything else that's going on, and as a consequence, like there's no termination payment, and those discussions are still ongoing with Dom.
Don, were you given any indication as part of this review kicking off that, hey, things might not be going your way? Was this all your decision?
No, this is my decision. I said the review's been ongoing. I've been in essence having my own reflections and my own consideration around what I think is ultimately best for the club and for the playing group and also myself, and that's how I reached the decision today.
Can I touch on what you said at the end there, your last note? Given what's happened in the last week with Danny Floyd's tragic passing, has that brought into clarity and focus for you, this decision?
No, not particularly. The tragic news of Danny, and clearly he's sat in this chair in the past, but so disappointed for obviously for him and feel for his family. But I think no, it hasn't had any impact in my decision.
Don, you're a proud man. Why weren't you part of the solution you just touched on moving forward?
Well, that's an interesting question, Andrew, because I look at it from many angles, and it's not a simple answer, and that's why it's going to be difficult to really give you complete clarity in that space. I guess knowing what I know about myself and about the group and about bits and pieces, I just feel like that's my gut feel tells me that it was time to move on.
Did you have lots of respect for the playing group? Obviously, it's important the coach has the full respect and support for the playing group. Have you lost some of that?
No, I didn't feel that, and certainly the conversation I had with people, I wasn't feeling that necessarily was the case. I think that's, as I said, it's a complex, sort of situation. But I guess, as I said, I went with what I thought was my gut that meant that the group needed just to change. The reality was, we finished where we finished. We won 10 games this season. It was below, I think, my expectations and certainly the players' expectations. And so taking all into account, the feeling was what can change, and understanding my role is a big role in the footy club. And change will, I'm sure, happen. I'm sure that the review will be undertaken. There'll be some great findings out of there which will allow the club to return back to the place it wants to be, which is consistently winning and playing finals footy. And I guess I assessed my position in that and decided that there was risk going forward in that space for both parties, and that therefore the decision was made to hand the reins to someone else, to give them the opportunity with a genuine fresh page and some clear air to take the group forward.
You're such a high achiever. How tough was that call for you, mate? Because clearly you would love to have got the club back up.
Yeah. I mean, it is, and I'll be honest with you, I ebbed and flowed in terms of do I, don't I? But as I said at the end of it, I've always said to the players that we make decisions at all times which are in the best interest of the club, and that's what I came back to, feeling that's in the best interest of the club as it stands, and so we move forward.
Almost resentment, like what could happen in the future. You worried for the future of the game. Did you sort of feel like did you lose a bit of love for coaching towards the end of it?
Look, there's no doubt it's a unique environment, and it's becoming more challenging. And I guess that's what I'm saying in that statement, is it's a challenging environment. But the reality is, as I've said before, the game is about people, and we're dealing with people. And I think at times we can lose sight of that in terms of some of the things of how it's dealt with, and the players are under the same. And the reality is, the pressure on this game is significant, and that's part of what you do take on for. That's why we're excited by the opportunities that we can create in the game and everything else. But I think there's a line, and I reckon we're treading carefully to the line.
Did that take its toll on you this year, Dom? That pressure that seems to constantly be around?
Oh well, certainly the general pressure that goes when you're losing games of footy in this town is real. I don't pretend to shy away from that. I think it's different to other markets. And at times, it does become quite draining, especially when you're dealing with some of the things which are, if I say fictional, it's probably correct, that we're having to respond to consistently. So it makes it a bit more challenging, yeah.
Don, was there a moment in your reflection in the lead up to this where you thought that was a critical juncture for you that tipped you towards this decision?
No, there wasn't one particular moment. I think it was, obviously the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season were particularly challenging. We weren't playing good footy, and clearly when that's happening as a coach, you're looking at yourself, and you're looking at exactly what's being created and what's not allowing the group to play the way they are. And as I said, I sit at the top of the tree in terms of our football structure, and therefore I look in the mirror first and say, what can I do differently and what can I change? And I guess when I weighed all that up and I balanced the risk out, I decided that I think it's in the best interest of the footy club for me to move on and give someone else a fresh start, to allow the playing group, as I said, that clean air to really attack next season.
How much was the decision weighed towards sort of sticking around? You said that you considered you could have been part of the solution.
Yep.
Was it as easy as you've reached your point now?
No, it wasn't. It was, as I said, it was a very difficult decision to make because, again, as a person who loves the footy club, loves his playing group, and would love to stay around and see that through, it was difficult to make that final decision. But as I said, on the balance of what I was assessing, I thought it was the right decision to make.
You mentioned the health and happiness of those closest to you.
Yep.
How much of the part is family and the total, the strain on the family in this decision?
Yeah, well, that's a component. That's one part. I mean, there's some, there's always in these decisions you're looking at a whole range of people who are impacted by what you do, including myself, and that's certainly a consideration.
Did they want you to keep going?
No, there was no direction coming from family or friends to say it's time or whatever else. I mean, you're just aware of the fact that that it changes some of the relationships you have with those people, just by virtue of the industry you're in and by the job you do.
You said you were open to staying in the football industry. What does that look like? Can you even put a finger on it at all?
I have absolutely no idea because I haven't spent 1 minute thinking about it, to be honest. I've had all my energy and time considering exactly where I sit here and engaging in conversations with Andrew and with Rob and others. And now that I've made that decision, I guess I'll have to think about what to do as an unemployed man now.
So what are your feelings towards that part of your life?
Don't know. I'm going to take some time just to, basically spend some time with the family and friends and get some clarity around what it is that I want to do. I'm keen to keep coaching. I think I've got something to offer in that space, and we'll see what presents.
Don, you're close to winning the premiership 2
Yep.
years ago, not the Premier, obviously made the grand final. The camp came after that. How much has that impacted on the club's demise since then and your decision now?
Oh, well, and I've said before, and I'm not going to go back over old ground, but I've said before that we've recognised that the camp was a miss. So it's a component. It's there. It happened, but we've said it was a miss.
It was a distraction. Clearly a distraction. A lot of people ask about what are the one or two things. Don said it himself. We've spoken about in the last couple of weeks. It's just a myriad of little things that have added up, and we've oscillated. We've gone back and forth, Don, haven't we, over the last couple of weeks until last night, where Don spoke to us and he'd made up his mind that in the best interests of him and his personal situation, and in the best interests of the club, and to use his words, to give it some clear air and enable someone with some fresh eyes to come in and give us the best chance of, and everybody is part of it, the fans, the supporters, players, to get the success that it strives for.
And Rob or Andrew, on that point, the clear air, is that when Don came to you, was it relief? Was it frustration? What?
Certainly not relief. Certainly not relief. As Don said it earlier, the industry and our football club is made up of people and relationships. So the one thing I lament too, and I support what Don said earlier, there's really, really good people in our football club. And, to end up like this hurts. I won't make any, I can't say it any other way. It hurts. So I'm not happy about it. And I'm still wrestling, right up to the last minute. Is this right? I'm still not sure, to be honest, right? But Don has made this decision. It's exclusive of anything else that's going on in our football club. And Don is a man of the highest calibre. He's an A-grade person with great values. He's set high standards. And I think whatever he sets his mind to and tasks himself with next, he'll achieve. But this is sad.
Do you think fans have got it wrong about Don?
We listen to the fans, and we've been listening to them in recent times, and we take into consideration everything that our fans say. But it's also not a popularity contest. And as a chairman and as a CEO and as a board and a senior management team, we need to make decisions that are in the best interests of the football club. Now, as much as we take all of those opinions into account, we are the ones closest to it, and we will make the best decisions until we're not the right people to make them.
And you're on the part of the review. Can you tell us how it evolves from here? What it now means?
Yeah, well, the review process will still continue as it's set out to. So Jason, Matthew, Tim and Jonah have been conducting their meetings and interviews. They've met with a large number of the players and the coaching staff and football department staff, and that'll continue for the next couple of weeks. So as Don and Rob have outlined, this decision is completely separate to that. But obviously the key themes and insights might help form or help to inform us as we look to identify the best candidate to now take the senior coaching role at the Adelaide Football Club. So what we learn from that will help us with the next step that we have to take.
And I understand that question, and can I just reinforce Don's decision is exclusive of that review. I just want to reinforce it. And I tell you, the pause button hasn't been pushed in our football club today either. There's numerous things going on and programs of work that are underway that at this time of the year we all do. And there's a big agenda there, and they're going on side by side, and over the next few weeks all of that will play out, and any decisions that need to be made will be made, and as you said, Andrew, it's going to plan to date.
There you go. We'll leave the press conference there. Of course, that was Don Pyke and the Crows bosses on Pyke's departure from the club. Warren Treadray, we'll bring you in here. What do you make of all of this?
Well, it's very interesting, Kate, because on August 25th, in the final round of the season, he said, I'm committed to staying in Adelaide and fulfilling the final 2 years of his contract. Well, something has significantly changed in that period. We know there is a review underway. But Don Pyke, speaking about a couple of things there, he wants clean hair. He understands change is required for this football club, the Adelaide Crows, to move forward while he is there. He's talked about it being both drained personally, with his family as well, and also to the playing group. The big part of it is he admitted he was part of the problem, but he also significantly pointed out there are others. So make no mistake, this could not be the last movement of the Adelaide Football Club in the off-season. He's also talked about the message not getting through to the players, effectively saying they're not listening anymore. So the challenge for him, when you lose your players, he's effectively stepped down in his role. Interesting from the chairman, Rob Chapman, saying it's a resignation, but discussions are ongoing about a potential payout. So it is interesting here what has gone on, and the players acutely aware that Don Pyke would know that there is this review going underway, happening at this stage. Does he sit back and go, well, I'm getting some information to say it's not looking good for my tenure, and it's effectively for me, Kate, I'm thinking a coach has fallen on his sword effectively before the club has had to make a tough call.
That well could be the case, and it is very early, Treaders, but are there any obvious candidates for the coaching job at West Lakes now?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic. 3 years ago, grand finalists, all of a sudden Adelaide now has fallen from the premiership race at a record level. Talk about some of the ones. The one that comes who is, I think, a really good experienced coach. Ben Rutt as an inexperienced coach. I think he's a real red-hot chance of getting this for the Adelaide Footy Club. Star Crows defender, assistant at Richmond when they beat Adelaide in that grand final. Been an assistant at Essendon the past couple of seasons. Only a week ago was mentioned if John Worsfold didn't go on the finals, this could be the man that takes over. So he knows Adelaide, Ben Rutt, and I think that'll be important in the next job. And an experienced coach, you can't go past Brad Scott. I do hear, however, he is probably going to join the AFL in a role, but hey, if you ask the question, you may be able to twist his arm.
Well, I guess we'll see. It's all open now, and that is where we will leave our coverage. But we will have more, of course, on this breaking news that Don Pyke has stepped down as coach of the Crows this afternoon, and of course full coverage in 9 News tonight at 6. Thanks for your company.
This is Adelaide's 9 News.
Good evening. Don Pyke has sensationally quit as Adelaide Football Club coach, declaring he's partly to blame for the Crows' woes and not the man to fix them. On the way out the door, Pyke warned too much public pressure was being applied to players and coaches.
In the spotlight for one final moment as Adelaide coach.
It's been an absolute privilege and a joy to coach this club.
But declaring it was all over.
My gut feel tells me that it was time to move on.
A decision only days in the making, shared with the players only 90 minutes before it was announced.
And clearly it wasn't an easy conversation to have with a group of players that I've grown to love.
Pyke brought strength to a club shattered by the death of its previous coach Phil Walsh, and he stood with his players all the way to the 2017 grand final. The loss was devastating, and so was the pre-season camp that followed. The controversial attempt to strengthen the players' minds, losing some of their hearts.
We've recognised that the camp was a miss. So it's a component, it's there, it happened, but we've said it was a miss.
The next two final series were also a miss. There were signs of player unrest, and then came the heat from fans, perhaps a little too much.
I think there's a line, and I reckon we're treading carefully to the line. The general pressure that goes when you're losing games of footy in this town is real. I don't pretend to shy away from that. I think it's different to other markets, and at times, it does become quite draining, especially when you're dealing with some of the things which are, if I say, fictional.
But it's a fact Adelaide isn't where it should be, and Pyke put the club before himself.
I recognise that With others, I believe I'm part of the problem, quite clearly. The real question that I've grappled with in the last probably couple of weeks since the season's finished is, am I also part of the solution?
He decided the answer was no.
But Don has made this decision, and Don is a man of the highest calibre. He's an A-grade person with great values.
It's been a wonderful ride, but now it is clear for me it's time to move on, knowing I've given it my all.
Sadly, sometimes that's not enough. So those in charge here at the Adelaide Football Club are tonight searching for another coach. And given some of Don Pyke's words, they're perhaps doing a little soul-searching themselves. Kate?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rennie. And of course, plenty of reaction tonight to Don Pyke's departure. Harvey Biggs, you've been speaking with fans.
I have, Kate, and everyone I've spoken to said the same thing. They all have great respect for Don Pyke, but even some of the most ardent supporters admit that perhaps it is time for a change.
I'm very, very sad. I thought he was brilliant.
I think he put the footy club first, which was pretty brave.
A change has got to be done.
I think it's best for the club. They don't seem to be doing all that well at the moment.
A former player and now commentator Stephen Rowe says Pyke has done the right thing with integrity and reckons the bosses...
They really need to have a look at who's going to implement this change. And it can't be the current chairman and CEO at that club.
I asked Andrew Fagan if he was considering his future at the club. This was his response.
No, I love this footy club and I think we've got an exciting future and I intend to do my very best to achieve all that we possibly can.
But that may not be all his decision, with an external review still underway at the club. Kate?
Thank you, Harvey.
Welcome back live to West Lakes. Following the bombshell announcement that Don Pyke has stepped down as the Adelaide Crows senior coach, Tom Wren has been following this story all day long. Rennie, what do we know?
Well, Treaders, we know that he felt that he was no longer part of the solution for the Crows going forward, so he's decided to part ways with the club despite having 2 years to run on his contract. We know that he did have a successful record in terms of win-loss over his 4-year tenure. He took the club to a grand final in 2017. We also know, though, that they made mistakes along the way. He admitted that. The camp in 2018, the pre-season camp, they haven't made finals for the past couple of seasons, so there have been some problems along the way as well. Let's have a listen, though, to what Don Pyke had to say in terms of his reasoning to part ways with the footy club.
I've had discussions with both Andrew and Rob over recent times. I've elected to stand down as the coach of the Crows. The decision's been extraordinarily difficult to reach, and I do so following some serious and honest post-season reflections. But clearly, the team's recent performance and the current state of the club and the playing group is not to our or my expectations, and for this in my role, I ultimately accept responsibility. Further this, I believe to continue to coach in the current environment the club and myself have endured is simply not sustainable. I therefore feel it is best I make way and allow a fresh and new voice to set a new direction. I believe the club needs some clean air and a fresh page to move forward, and feel that for me to continue would potentially hold back progress to move positively into next season. I sit at the top of the tree in terms of our football structure, and therefore I look in the mirror first and say, what can I do differently and what can I change? And I guess when I weighed all that up and I balanced the risk out, I decided that I think it's in the best interest of the footy club for me to move on and give someone else a fresh start, to allow the playing group, as I said, that clean air to really attack next season. With others, I believe I'm part of the problem, quite clearly. The real question that I've grappled with in the last probably couple of weeks since the season finished is, am I also part of the solution?
So, Rennie, that says to me there'll be another full person in this one because, let's face it, Don Pyke mentioned then with others. So he took the blame, but he also said there's some few others. So that says to me there'll be more change. Now, the logical step now is, once this review happens, I think they're going to find someone else, and a big name person is probably going to fall under the axe as well.
It's hard to argue with that, especially considering his decision wasn't prompted by the club's review. He was at pains to point that out. The findings of that could see, as you said, further personnel changes. Now, Pyke was flanked by some senior officials at this press conference earlier today. Here's what they had to say.
Not a great thing, mate, but it's a tough caper, and Don has to do what's best for himself and for the footy club, and he's made a brave decision.
So I'm not happy about it, and I'm still wrestling, right up to the last minute. Is this right? Still not sure, to be honest. It'll be an extensive search to find the very best replacement that we can, and we're confident that we can do that.
We want to find the best possible person, not the person that we can find the quickest. So it's an important decision.
So, Treaders, as it stands, the Crows don't have a senior coach at the moment. The club is now in the process of selecting a panel to determine who that will be. Who are you hearing as the potential replacements?
Well, I think you're going to look two ways. You're going to go experience, Rennie, and I think Brad Scott, you've got to pick up the phone and ask the question if he wants to coach. We know he's owed big money from North Melbourne next year because he was contracted, but my understanding is he's going to work in the AFL in a coaching type role, a leadership role, so it's a long shot. But then the next step is inexperienced. Do you look at former player Ben Rutten, distinguished player, unbelievable footballer, but the club is facing a massive heavy rebuild. We know what they're going to do with senior players. They've already flagged they're going to make changes, and they need someone who's going to be hungry and willing to move through this review. So Ben Rutten could be one, fan favourite, worked at Richmond, worked at Essendon, was also spoken about whether he was going to replace John Worsfold a short time ago. So it wasn't so long.
Matthew Nicks, is he a potential one as well?
I think this one is the one that I'd be seriously picking the phone up. Worked in development at Port, a senior assistant and assistant role at Port Adelaide. He's he's been a former player at the Swans, and then he's also spent time at GWS. So he knows the market, and both Ben Rutten and Matty Nicks know Adelaide. And you're going to have to know Adelaide because effectively that's what's worn Don Pyke down.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a massive day down here at West Lakes, but there has been some other positive news out of Port Adelaide today. Treaders, what can you tell us?
Well, it's interesting. It's all about Paddy Ryder, and it looks as if he is on the way out of Port Adelaide. He met with Essendon as he prepares to leave Alberton. Looks like he will take those options up. Ryder played 170 games for the Bombers before traded to Port Adelaide after the Essendon supplement scandal. Essendon, one of several clubs, including St Kilda and GWS, who are interested in the 2017 All-Australian.